So far, we have put together a list of the performers that we have. I think I sent that to you, but there's a girls group called Saucy, which is out of St. Louis, that are going to be performing. We have Bone Crusher, who's going to headline. I'm Cappriccieo Scates, Associate Director of Writer and Publisher Relations for SESAC here in the Atlanta office.
And how has the industry changed from a songwriting standpoint in the last, since you've been working with SESAC?
Well, I think overall, from a songwriter perspective, it's become more of a songwriter business. It's more songwriter driven, as opposed to before it may have been more artist driven. I think now we're definitely in a songwriter market and a songwriter environment.
Do you know how an album is put together and who chooses the songs that are to be selected for that album?
Typically, I mean, I think it's a long, drawn-out process as it relates to, you know, there's so many different facets of actually the album being put together. Sometimes if you have like a production team, or you have the A&R, you have the label. But I think for the most part, it starts with just the simple, the artist and the concept, and trying to get a direction as to, you know, where they want to go with the project.
Who controls the rights to the work artists do one song? Who controls the rights to the work?
Well, it depends. I mean, the business really boils down to two things. It's copyrights and masters. And so who owns the copyrights, who owns the masters, who controls the copyrights, who controls the masters. I think for the most part, obviously with the labels, they have that master point as it relates to the recording. And then certainly from the publishing aspect, they have the copyright portion. So it's really the person that owns the content, for the most part, controls it.
How has piracy affected songwriting?
I think to the extent people have become more protective and less willing to pitch their songs and, you know, kind of play songs for various folks and just like sending songs via email and that type of thing, I think is getting more specific to the way that writers are actually seeking to be on projects. And so there's always a concern that someone's going to take the song and do something with it, or, you know, illegally download, and so you don't want to be in a position where the songs that you're submitting, before they even reach the fruition of where they're going, or a song that you may have written for someone, all of a sudden gets leaked and now it's, you know, playing someplace and it affects your ability to even make the project. So
people pretty much trust you, like they do send you MP3s?
Definitely. I think for the most part, yeah, that there are trusted sources, and certainly, you know, SESAC or someone in my capacity would be a trusted source, but I think overall people are not as apt to just send songs like that because they're concerned about, you know, those songs being infringed or their rights being infringed upon.
Do you feel like consumers can change the selection of what's being heard on the radio? Can they affect songwriting in some way?
I think so. I think for the most part, consumers are pretty much fed the direction in which the industry dictates. But I think part of that, if the consumers don't necessarily want to hear that, then they have to respond as such. They have to say, turn off the radio, or, you know, not necessarily support, which I think we've seen a lot of that, you know, with the sales have actually gone down. And I think a result of that has been that some of the albums just haven't been that good or that well produced. And so for that part, the consumers are saying, hey, we don't like this, and so therefore they're not purchasing it. So we have to go back in now and create better records.
What messages are encouraged when artists are in the songwriting phase of their album? Like how you say you work closely with artists when they're writing. What type of encouragement are you give in that phase?
Man, I think for the most part, the biggest thing I try to relate to folks is that, you know, getting it's never the problem. So people are so concerned on getting it and making it. I think making it is not the issue, it's maintaining it once you get there. And I often use the analogy, I say, you know, you can get a wife, you can get a mansion, or you can get a Bentley. And if you don't maintain it, you get divorced, foreclosed, and repoed. And so a lot of what I talk about is really sustainment and really taking care of those writers. I'm troubled when a person can have a #1 record on the radio, get a toothache, and can't go to the dentist because they don't have insurance. And so a lot of what I do is just strictly about the maintenance and maintaining and being able to sustain yourself beyond the hit record. Because I think generally the folks that I work with, the hit record or writing great songs part, they have that part down. But it's what do you do once you have obtained or reached that goal of getting your first #1 or your second or 10th or whatever #1 record, how do you continue and sustain? And I think that's always the biggest thing. So that's more of the, you know, the impact and what I really bring to the table as it relates to how I help to maintain what the writers are doing. You know, it's interesting. When I started at SESAC, my understanding was very simple. I said, you know, I'll come here and I'll sign a couple of writers, and we'll figure it out. And so I had no idea of how really in-depth it is and how much you really are impacting the everyday lives of people. My number one thing is I'm going to sign new writers. Number two, I want to sustain the writers that we currently have. And number three, I want to brand the company. But less of an emphasis on branding, more about taking care of songwriters. But I think that the biggest thing that I've learned, man, is just like it's so much involved with just the day-to-day activities of people, you know, that is just beyond songwriting, but that's a part of it. You know, you write a great song, but you know, if all of the other stuff that goes along with it is not right, then it doesn't fare as well for you. So I think the biggest thing I've learned is just like, man, it's a whole lot more to it than just writing a song.
What is the most important skill or characteristic an individual entering songwriting music should have? You kind of touched on it.
I think for the most part, it's probably humility. And knowing, you know, what your role is and how to play your role and learning your lane and growing from that. You know, I often say your floor is someone else's ceiling. So where you are, someone else is trying to get to. And so you need to just know how to really approach the fact of like, okay, this is where I am and this is where I want to go. And being able to bring the right people around, take direction, take guidance. I think that's a very, very important thing because often people are, you know, they're shooting to be, you know, at that next level, so to speak. But there's steps to get to that, and you have to be patient. And so I think the humility part is probably the biggest thing, or the most important thing.
Background that helped you get into this, not necessarily just degree, but what other things as far as industry-wise that you might have?
Well, I started out as a drummer. I went from that to doing independent promotions as far as radio, retail, clubs, street promotion, working for Sony, Universal, Tommy Boy, Atlantic, Death Row, Maverick, a bunch of labels in the Virginia, DC, Baltimore area. From there, I got an opportunity to go to Rough House, Columbia Records, where I promoted Crisscross, the Fuji, Cypress Hill. I did national radio promotions there. I wrote a book called 10 Steps to Successfully Managing Recording Artists, which was published in October '04. And coupled with school, I have an associate's in liberal arts, bachelor's criminology and sociology combined, and an MBA, business administration. So I think like it's all very important, but there's a part of the street sense, so to speak, and then there's a part of the book sense. So I think a lot of times people say, well, you have street sense, and I think a lot of that is common sense. But I guess if it was so common, they wouldn't call it common sense. So you know, a lot of that is just is really kind of fusing all of those worlds together. SESAC, your rights, your music, your money, all day, 24/7, 365.